We're on the fringes of the Humming Woods, and we meet three, whether they know it or not, yet doomed, entitled treasure hunters. It's early morning, and they are breaking camp, having spent an uneasy night on the outskirts of this place that they know they have to delve into the heart of. They know they have to delve deep into the unknown, to the sixth form heart, this legendary monstrous beehive, where they might find treasures, perhaps, in the shape of royal jelly, which purportedly has healing properties, but who can say? Or perhaps even a bigger prize, which would be the mother of millions, the queen bee, because whatever her power is in any of your hands, that could be quite something. So let's meet our group. I think Vero, as a trained soldier, how long ago it was that you were in the service, or what that service was, is your knowledge, I guess. Do you think you would probably have been taking the last watch overnight?
Yes, absolutely.
Well, let's meet them. Do you want to just talk us through how you wake up earlier than everyone else? And tell us a little something about what you look like, how you're equipped, and I'd like to know how, despite it being a quiet night, and despite the fact that you didn't see anything, I'd like to know how Vero knows that something's not quite right here.
Of course, Vero is up before the sun. She always is. And at this moment, we see her standing apart, spine straight, and her grey eyes trained on the forest, occasionally glancing at her temporary associates. She's got dark, slicked back hair and very pale, almost sickly skin. Maybe she was lovely once, but time and sickness and rumination have stripped that all away from her now. She was a soldier once, still a lancer, still carries her lance at her side, always clutching it. And if you were to zoom in on her hand that holds the lance, you'd just see a slight nervous twitch of the fingers to let you know that something's not quite right, something's off. She's not sure what yet, but she feels it.
Thank you. That's soldier's instinct kicking in, I guess, training. And that training is going to become invaluable to you. And in this moment, that training shows itself because you're the one who hears it first. Muradi, you're next to rise, or maybe you've been awake this whole time, watching Vero dutifully go about her soldier's routine, perhaps. Tell us how we find Muradi preparing for the day.
It's true to say it's not clear whether Muradi was ever asleep. Not that anyone would necessarily know, but we first find Muradi knelt down. You can hear the metallic jingling of something running through his hands, and a very mumbled, almost chanting that is in a language no one really understands, least of all him. But after his morning ritual has completed, he stands, and you see a tall, quite thin man, very gaunt features, sunken eyes, the whites of his eyes speckled with red. He's bald, and you can see on his forehead 2 concentric rings tattooed with what looks like the blade of a scythe in the center. He closes a robe that he's wearing and clasps it shut. It's black but has gold trim around all of the edges. And he turns to see Vera already going around her morning patrols, and stands, and you can see around his left gloved hand a remarkably well-maintained iron chain, given that it's wont to rust, wrapped around his hand and along his forearm, dangling. And in his right hand, he has a similar chain, but this one, curiously, continues on and is attached to the top of what appears to be a coffin in the same colors as his robes, black wood with metallic trim on all the edges, painted gold. And he hefts it up with his arm and swings it over his shoulder onto his back and holds it there. Something he has never seen without, and moves off to meet his compatriots. And at this point, he also hears it, I suppose.
Oh, he does. Tell me, Muradi, as you approach Vero, who has established this perimeter, as it were, to protect you all, how do you know that she's out of her depth?
Muradi knows Vero's a soldier, has seen a lot of dangerous situations, and when was introduced to her, got the impression that she was pretty confident in her ability to approach this sort of thing. But while getting used to that kind of confidence coming exuding from her, has seen it all disappear over the past day or two, and can see the twitch in her hand, something that he hasn't seen up to this point.
Very nice, thank you. And I would say last to rise, but whether or not they have slept, who can say? Macero, tell us how we find you awaking from a troubling dream, and perhaps give us some indication as to what the dream was or what was so disturbing about it.
We find Macero on the edge of our little camp, I will call it, sitting in a cross-legged position. At least that's what we can assume, because her body is mostly covered by a dark veil, and the only parts of her body that we can see are her hands and maybe the upper part of her nose. Her skin is very dark, and the only way we can tell that she is suddenly waking up is by her eyes opening really wide and staring into, well, the surroundings. And we can tell something is off. Something has concerned her, because her gaze kind of starts to go into a sort of trance, a sort of nothingness. And we can hear how she breathes in with a big, big breath. And the next thing we see is how she lifts her body with a very elegant move and almost seems to kind of float towards her companions. And as she goes, she begins to say, "No, no, 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 no. Not again. Not again." But we don't really know what she's alluding to.
Very nice, thank you. Now you can all hear it, but it's a sound that doesn't make a great deal of sense because it doesn't tie to anything any of you can see. But it sounds like the whinnying of a horse at somewhat of a distance. And it kind of comes and goes, but you can't see or hear anything else. But it's enough to set you a little on edge. And what I'd like now is now you're all awake and now we've met you all. I'd like a little scene here. Macero, actually, if you want to frame this scene up. But what I'd like to get from this scene is who's in charge, what's the plan, and how are you going to go about it? So let us know how we find you and how naturally this conversation comes up between these three very odd, disparate people.
I think as Macero floats towards the others, you two can kind of hear the sound of, you would say it's something like chimes, like little bells that keep chiming over and getting louder and louder as she comes closer to you. And when you turn towards her, she will say something along the lines of, "It is happening. Are we ready?" And she will look towards Vero.
Vero feels a bit unsettled, a bit wary around Macero, but does her best not to show it. Is it time? Are we moving?
We must move. It is time. Are you ready, Muradi?
As of a few moments ago. But I was given to understand we were seeking some sort of hive. So what is that? He looks to Vera.
I don't know, but I will soon. Follow me?
Very nice, thank you. And as you move off, despite the fact that the wood is fairly dense, and you're stepping over the threshold into the humming woods now, because the canopy is tightly knotted, and there are deep shadows here. It's dark, not much sunlight getting through. Certainly not in this area anyway. But despite that, there is this pleasant warmth to the surroundings, and it's making you all feel like you're wearing too much and you have to cast something off. What does each of you perhaps begrudgingly leave behind?
When Maradi feels this heat, you can see him play with the clasp on his robe a little bit, and then pulls away a few moments later, and he very carefully unwraps the chains from both of his arms and places them gingerly on the ground before pulling off his long gloves from his elbows and closes his fists. And you can, as he opens them, you can see welts and cuts along both of his arms. And he just drops the gloves carelessly to behind him, and then again, very carefully, lifts the chains, wraps them back around both of his arms, and hefts the coffin back onto his back again.
Massaro will very carefully remove the veil that has so far covered her nose and mouth, and will let it fall behind her as she is walking along the group. And she will glance back towards it and then slowly look away.
Instinctively, Vero reaches for the shawl that she wears about her armor. She goes to remove it because it's the warmest thing she wears, but then she stops. She looks down at a little bit of embroidery along the hem, and she's carefully stitched in through the years. Just a little pattern of a wheel, over and over and over again. She keeps it on, and instead reaches for her overshirt, which she removes, just wearing a vest and a shawl, an odd combination, but it'll do.
An odd combination indeed. You don't have to travel too far before you come across something a little unsettling. Vera, are you taking point? Are you leading the way?
Yes.
Well, then I think maybe you stumble into this first, but the others perhaps see it. So it's quite an odd arrangement. You find yourself standing in the center of a circle, and it's a circle that's made of skulls, and the skulls seem to go in descending size, and they start with perhaps a bear, and then what's probably an elk, and then other creatures, and getting smaller and smaller and smaller, right down to squirrel and mouse sized. But there's a fair few human skulls in there of various sizes. How does this make you feel when you realized this is where you're stood?
Vero's quite familiar with death and with killing. I think she'll pause, takes it in, is a bit confused, curious perhaps, but she's not disturbed.
Excellent. Anyone else have any thoughts about what this could mean? Who could have done this?
Maradi will move round the circle and get down to one knee when he reaches the human skulls in that size, and reaches out with one hand. You can hear the chains hanging off, jangling, and stops before he touches one and just kind of examines it closely. I suspect this was not done as ordinary funeral rites, but perhaps the animal skulls would close into that regardless. But it seems obvious to me. Someone took a lot of care. And he praises the skull again and says, there's an inkling of any remnants on these. They've been cleaned meticulously.
I think Massaro will step towards Maradi and listen to his explanation and will then say, "Do you think it is a warning sign? A sign for us to turn back?"
If whoever put this here wanted that, they would have had to do a bit more than throw skulls in a circle at us, I think.
I agree. And then she will kind of cower downwards and reach towards one of the smallest skulls, take it up into her fingers, and then crush it in her hand.
Wonderful. I think, Massaro, I'd like you to make a ruin roll, because I don't know whether or not you've just desecrated something. And if you have, I want to see what effect that has. So this is our first roll of the game, everyone. Ruin roll is the most straightforward. It says, when you witness or undergo something disturbing, roll a dark die. And then what we're looking for is it to be higher or lower than your current ruin. We're starting the game out now. I think everyone's ruin is at 2. So this is higher, not equal to. So a 1 or a 2, you're fine. Anything, 3, 4, 5, or 6, you're fine. 1 or a 2, you're in trouble. So give us a roll. Let us know how it goes.
All right, one single roll with one single dark die.
Correct.
Okay. It's a 4.
Very good. So it strikes you as an odd arrangement. But whatever power this place had or is supposed to be imbued with, you can't feel it. You can't feel in any way threatened or stayed by whatever this message is supposed to be, if that's what it is. But this moment is kind of broken by the sound again, and you all hear it this time, and you all hear it because it is close. You hear the pained neighing of a horse, and that is quickly followed by the appearance of said horse. It's a grey-white nag, and it bursts out of the forest, causing you all to dive out of the way, and it thunders through the clearing, circling around as it's panicking. And the odd thing to note about this horse is that it has a mesh mask, but it's hanging off, and it's around its neck, and it's kind of flapping as this thing rears back and neighs and brays. And as you all get to your feet, you can see that this poor thing, its face is swollen, red and sore. Its eyes are bloodshot. It's in the gums that you can see. Its exposed teeth are swollen and kind of bursting with pustules. This poor thing is envenomed and is freaking out. But before you can kind of really deal with this thing, it bolts, leaving a trail of supplies that it's got on in its packs on the side. This is a pack horse. And then something else appears. We find in this clearing with you that's been suddenly interrupted by this wretched creature, 3 apiarists dressed in beekeeping attire. They have been chasing this horse, and they've been chasing it away from the direction in which you're headed. They are wearing their wide-brimmed hats with the meshes over their faces, their heavy gloves. Some of them are carrying their smokers, that you'd use to smoke out, to fog out the bees. There's 1 man, 2 women, and they look exhausted. and they double over as they reach the clearing. And they notice you all for the first time. And you can see the fear in their eyes. You can see just how fried they are, how frazzled they are. And they can sense in you an opportunity, because they've lost their supplies, they've lost their pack horse. But you all seem fairly well provisioned. What do you do?
Vero stands in front of the others out of instinct, lowers her lance, and bellows as best she can. Stop! What are you doing? What is this?
And wordlessly, they kind of fan out and almost try and look like they're circling around you. They are fixed upon your packs and your supply, and also on some of the stuff that's dropped off the horse out of the saddlebags. Maradi, what are you doing in this moment?
Maradi looks at them and then looks back over his shoulder where the horse bolted to, turns back. Was that your horse back there? What happened to it? And he's slowly moving out from behind Vero and trying to match the movements that they're making so that they're not getting kind of surrounded and moving outwards as they do.
Macero, what's your view on this standoff?
I think Macero's eyes will kind of dart between the three people that are facing towards their group, and she will slowly move her hands behind her back and just kind of keep them there, get very still, and then focus her gaze on one of those people and say, "You've heard his question. Answer."
Oh, and you get your answer. Each of them pulls out an apiarist's knife they use for uncapping the honey from the hive. One of you needs to do something. Who's it going to be?
With the answer, Macero will take her hands from behind her back and reveal a colony of spiders in her left and right hand that she's seemed to taken from nowhere, and she will move the spiders towards her mouth and whisper something that the other two can't hear, and then will set the spiders on the ground before her. And I think I would like to try to cast a ritual which is called Swarm, and enables me to trade a favor with a colony of vermin, and I would like my spiders to possibly help me somehow in this situation.
Lovely. Calling on spiders to help you somehow. What a perfect Trophy Dark thing to say. So we are going to make a risk roll, and we are going to have a ritual. Rituals in Trophy Dark are very dangerous, and they really up the potential for bad things to happen. So we're going to put together our first risk roll. It's a negotiation between us as players, and we're going to talk through it. So for a risk roll, before you try and do something risky, you're going to tell us what it is. You've set out what you want to do. You want to use a ritual to encourage, should we say, a little gang of spiders to do your bidding to drive these apiarists off. That's what your intention is, yeah? To drive them off or to
Yes.
attack them? Okay, so what we're going to do is build a dice pool. So you're going to take a light die if the task that you're doing is something you're skilled at because of your occupation or your background. So what from your skills do you think is relevant here?
So my occupation is sorcerer, and I am skilled in rituals. So I'm hoping that this ritual skill will help me in performing a ritual.
It definitely does. So take one light dice. You are also going to take one dark dice, just as standard, because that's what happens when you do a ritual. They're pretty powerful and they're pretty dangerous. Now we get to have a little bit of a negotiation. So I will ask the players. I'll ask Meg and I'll ask Chris. What do we think could happen if this goes wrong?
I have an offer.
Oh, this isn't a devil's bargain. This is just the consequence.
okay.
We'll get to devil's bargains in a second.
Okay. Good roll. Well, if they're beekeepers, right? They're suited up for dealing with things that can sting you and such. Maybe they're more well prepared for a swarm of spiders than you might expect most people to be because of that.
Yeah, Meg, you got something?
Yeah, similar to what Chris said. Perhaps this is child's play to them, and it might just embolden them.
Yeah, I get the narrative authority over the failure, but I will take those ideas and let them cook away in my awful pot of consequence. And now we will open the doors for devil's bargains. Now, a devil's bargain in this game, you see them in other games, it's something that happens no matter what the roll. And the reason that you would take this consequence is you get a light die added to your pool. And to give you an example, a very basic devil's bargain could be no matter what happens, you take the 3 dice, but you're going to lose something important from your kit. You'll lose the map that you've all been following or something. That's a devil's bargain. It's a very prosaic and perhaps disinteresting one, but that's more a kind of a plot devil's bargain than a story devil's bargain. An interesting story's devil's bargain would be something along the lines of no matter what happens, you find out that one of the apiarists knew the person that you lost, the person that you are widowed of. So like that is a more interesting devil's bargain because it's your opportunity as players to add story elements in here. So the floor is open to devil's bargains. We can all offer one, or as many as we like between the 3 of us. And Cash, you can choose to accept precisely 1 or 0, and that will happen no matter how well your dice roll goes. So the floor is open, everyone. What have you got?
I had an idea, which is no matter what happens, performing this ritual, you've probably done it before, connects you with this swarm in some way that if the apiarists are able to squash or in other ways kill any of them, it's going to hurt.
Right, for my devil's bargain, I think no matter what happens, perhaps the noise and the commotion that follows this swarm appearing and whatever aftermath that causes will alert something else in the forest nearby.
I'm going to say no matter what happens, the swarm that you summon will combine into one giant spider, and you're going to have to try and bring that back to heel rather than deal with this swarm. So would you like to choose any of those devil's bargains? And if so, which one? You can also tweak them if it helps.
I think I would like to choose Chris's devil's bargain because I like the idea.
Perfect. So that is an extra light die. So from my reckoning, you should have 2 light die and 1 dark die. Now, the other players can offer to assist, but they can wait until after the roll is done. But bear in mind, it puts you in quite a lot of danger if you do. So you might want to see how it goes before you make that offer. So what we're looking for here in the roll is the highest number. 6 is a full success. You get to tell us how it went down. 4 and 5 is a success with some complications, and I'll tell you what they are. And a 1 to 3 is, well, unfortunately, it doesn't work out. And perhaps the situation worsens. And depending on what you roll, you might get to re-roll it. But the thing to look out for here is if the dark die is highest. So roll it up and tell us what you get.
Okay. So the highest number I have is a 5, and it's on a light die.
Perfect. So now, because the dark die wasn't highest, you could, if you wanted to, add another dark die and re-roll the whole lot. But you have to stop when the dark die is the highest dice. So if you want to keep going, you can, but the more dark dice you add, the worse it could get.
I think I will stick with my current slight success.
Okay, so you took a devil's bargain. You will like to fold that, and do you want to tell us how this happens? I'd like to see what this ritual looks like as you're performing it in the moment. I'd like to know how you fold in Chris's devil's bargain, and I'd like to know what effect it has, and then I'll think of a complication to spice things up.
And just to see if I understood Chris's devil's bargain correctly, so you said that whatever happens in the situation, I'm so connected with the swarm that I sent out that it will somehow hurt me, even if I succeed in casting away the 3 people, it will somehow hurt me, right?
Yeah, you are connected to this swarm in some way, that anything that happens to any of the spiders, you'll feel it.
So as I send them out, you can see how Macero kind of extends her hands after these spiders that begin to kind of scatter around the floor and grow bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and more powerful, and they will kind of launch on towards these 3 people and start kind of I don't want to be too graphic, but attacking them in very graphic ways. And as this happens, the 3 people will try their best to fend them off. And while some of my spiders are successful, others will be ripped apart from their bodies, basically. So legs will get ripped off and fangs will get ripped off, and with every body part that is stripped from one of my spiders, you kind of see, you other 2, you can see how Macero grows a little bit smaller and weaker, and she will start screaming at some point, screaming in pain and in agony. And if you turn to see what is happening to her, you can see that the part that was previously covered by her veil will kind of sink in. Her skin will seem to age in a very fast way, become wrinkly and fallen in. And at the end, once all of the 3 people have been decimated by the spiders, she's suddenly an old woman.
Interesting. Now, I get to play around with a little complication, and I think the way that you framed that up, I think, was really lovely. I say lovely. It was awful. Thank you, though. But I feel like everyone felt that. I feel like both Vero and Muradi were perhaps a little shocked by the extent of Macero's power there, and I think the extent of this scales of balance that seems to be in play, that the more powerful the effect, the greater a cost it seems to have on Macero. And I think that that's troubling for a couple of reasons. One, it's just on its face horrifying to see 3 people decimated by a swarm of spiders, but also you could be on the receiving end of this if things don't go your way. So I'd like you both to make a ruin roll, please. So just 1 dice against your current ruin.
That was a 6.
And that was a 4.
Okay, you managed to hold it together a little. But these are early days. With the apiarists seen off, you assess the battlefield as the spiders scurry away or return to whence they were conjured, and you find amongst what's left of the bodies and what was dropped by the horse from its saddlebags, you find the remainder of their supplies. Maradi, I feel as you're turning, bits over, or you're patting down the bodies, you find something that's relatively straightforward, and it's something that I feel like you think that you desperately need as a party, given how you think that perhaps Vero is slightly out of her depth. You find a map. It's faded and it's kind of crude. And what it shows is, because I think you guys have had pretty solid directions towards, the Humming Woods and where this sixth form heart is supposed to be. But this has got something that you've not seen on it. This pattern of concentric circles. There's these 3 great circles where you think they must represent the hive and the layers of the hive as you move in. But what is stranger than that is there seems to be drawings, and these were added by probably these apiarists, of bees, but bees with a human for scale, should we say. And these look kind of big. And from the way that it's drawn, it seems to look like the point of this drawing is to trace a route, almost like that's a patrol route, maybe. Who knows? That's yours now. That's yours to keep, and that's something that you've found. But my question is do you tell anyone about it?
I think yes. I think upon seeing the map, there's obviously a consideration Moradi has of, if we get to that point, this will be useful if I need to peel off and find know where to avoid, know where to go. But realizes that given Vero is essentially leading for the time being, right now it's going to be much more in his interests to keep her appraised of where we might want to go or not. So we'll go over to Miro and over to Vera and say, I'm not sure exactly what this means, but it appears that these 3 had mapped some sort of route.
She takes a look at the map, looks at Maradi, and nods respectfully. Thank you. Thank you for sharing this with us. Have you told Massaro?
Moradi looks over at Sarah and didn't seem relevant.
I think since Massaro's display of power, Vero's uneasiness about her is a bit greater, so she thinks for a moment, considers, and agreed. Let's keep this between us for now. Thank you.
Although if the drawings on this map are accurate, a swarm of spiders might not be our greatest concern.
Very nice. Just quickly, I realized, do you remember when I said that the rules about things being quite confusing? Your ruins both went up. It's higher than your current ruin, not lower than your current ruin. So if you would please mark that on the keeper, that your ruins both went up. In fact, all three of you did when you all made a ruin roll. So you're all at 3. Just catch that now before I do it repeatedly throughout this game.
Do we get a condition as well, or is that...
I'm going to save that.
Okay. Something to look forward to.
Oh, yeah. So, Vero, you also find something amidst the wreckage of this fight. And what it is, as you kind of root around in a bag to find it, you think, these apurists faced off against you with these small knives, but one of them in a bag had a much better weapon by the feel of it, a much bigger blade, and you pull it out, but it's not a knife, it's not a blade, it's a stinger, and it is a stinger the length of a human wrist. Do you tell anyone that you found this?
No. But she will keep it. She'll tuck it away somewhere safe.
Probably wise. And finally, Macero. You don't really find a great deal. What you pick through seems mostly broken, tattered, or like beyond repair. And you're about to kind of throw one such thing away. It's a little pouch of vials. They're all smashed. Whatever was in them is useless now. As you're about to toss it, you realize that one of these vials, even though it's splintered, the glass is starting to kind of spider web with cracking. There's actually something in the bottom of this. It's like a pale blue liquid. And I don't know how you know, but you just know it's anti-venom. 1 dose, shall we say. Do you tell everyone what you found?
I don't tell anyone what I found. I will take the vial with the antivenom and stash it somewhere underneath my cloak. And we can see as I do that movement that all of my spiders that I've previously summoned will have grown smaller again, and they're basically crawling back into my veil, up my skin, and I will move one of them on my finger towards my face and say, "Your father would be proud." And then I smile and join the other 2 again.
Very nice, thank you. This has been an intense interlude, this standoff, the display of power from Macero. I think perhaps feeding into Vero's thinking that things weren't quite right, you are all starting to feel a greater power at work here. And individually, that's reflected in some quite strange ways. I'm about to give you all some conditions, and our conditions in this game are things that are going to affect you in your role play, and I'd like you to pull on them as much as you can whilst we get through this awful, awful place. Maradi, since the standoff and the confrontation with the apurists, you feel something on your tongue, around your teeth. You're craving something. You're craving sweetness. You don't have any sugar or anything on you. That would be not something you would bring into a place such as this, but you suddenly find yourself always desiring nectar, anything sweet. Even the sweat on the back of your own hands is starting to look a little beguiling, perhaps. Keep that in mind as we move through. Vero. Something is telling you, maybe it's because you had to leave part of your outfit behind, but something's telling you you're exposed. And you feel as though you have to disguise yourself. And because of the stinger, perhaps, that you found, and perhaps the map that you saw, you feel like the only way you might be able to get past these bees is to look like one. So I'd like you to keep in mind how you might use the environment or things you find to perhaps try and throw off any bees that see you. Perhaps you might rub mud in stripes across you, or maybe the way you move, perhaps. But you feel compelled to do this. And Macero, after seeing your power and the effect that it had on you, you too feel as if you might be vulnerable to whatever is in these woods. And you have this kinship, I guess, with spiders and creepy crawlies, and you feel like you might have to decorate yourself. And should you ever come across a bee or creatures such as that, you have to show them that you are a harmless object that perhaps they can pollinate, perhaps. Whether you decorate yourself with flowers or sweet soil, that's what you're compelled to do. And as you wrestle with these strange feelings that you don't share with the others, it's ridiculous, why would you? You start to hear a low hum. I say here, you can feel it. You can feel it in your bones. You can feel it in your teeth. You can feel it in your skin. And it doesn't stop. And it never will. And so passes ring 1. So your first half-day trek through the humming woods is a slog, but the environment suddenly and drastically changes. The knotted trees and kind of deep shadows of the wood open out into a vast flooded plain, and this plain is an absolute riot of color. There are blooming flowers standing as twice as high as a person, and it goes on and on in every direction. And as you step out into it, you're kind of shin knee deep in the water, and footing is difficult because of all the networks of roots. below the waterline. And it's also slightly more difficult to keep a visual tab on each other. Because there's a hypnotic quality to this place. You all feel lightheaded, woozy. I'd like to know how your recently acquired conditions are coming into play as you enter this new kaleidoscopic environment.
Anyone who was paying attention would see Maradi almost wide-eyed and kind of not really focusing on where he is going so much as seeing all of these bright colors and all of these plants and things, and would grab at one and kind of take a sniff and see if he thinks maybe even tear one off and taste the petal and then chuck it away, and doesn't seem to be paying too much attention to where he's placing his feet. Stumbles a few times, but hefts himself back up. And I think probably even if you haven't been around him that long, you're used to him being very kind of composed, and that seems to have been almost entirely thrown out now. It seems quite manic.
Just on the subject of that, Maradi's drive is to break the siege on your sibling's fortress. We'll get into perhaps what that exactly means as we go. But I'd like to know how this exciting new, kind of entrancing, beguiling new environment, how does this remind you of a childhood time with that sibling? Maybe like a childhood adventure that you both went on. What about this reminds you of why you're here?
Maradi and Anders grew up in the Dramitian fortress together. Their parents were commanders, and they had precious little time to act like kids, really, in what was ostensibly a military installation. But there was a small amount allowed for recreational things within the fortress. They had good teams of gardeners and things who would make kind of places within the walls that people could relax, something to take their minds off what was going on outside. And Maradi remembers he and his younger brother Anders playing silly games amongst the flowers. They would sometimes challenge each other to find a specific one, or they would pick them and try and make collages of all the same color or different colors, and they would always get a light scolding from their parents, never seriously, but there was always a brief moment there when they got to feel like kids, if only for half an hour at a time.
Lovely, thank you. Macero, given how you feel the need to decorate yourself, to make yourself perhaps look like a more attractive receptor, how does that manifest itself in this new place?
I think Macero will very carefully walk through this plain of flowers and start picking singular petals off the plants. And she will look at them very closely, seem to examine them for something, but you cannot really tell what she's looking for. And in the end, she will have a small collection of different colored petals in her hands, which she will kind of gaze onto and say, These remind me so much of your father. And then she will start sticking some of them onto her dark veil, her cape, I will call it. And even though they're placed in very random spots, for her it will seem almost intentional, the movements that she does. She seems to have a pattern that she wants to recreate. And I think she at some point will draw one of those little spiders from her body off and kind of gently kiss the spider and place it on one of the petals and then just kind of stand in the place where she is.
Very nice, thank you. Tell me, this expedition, you know what the stakes are? You know what you think is at the heart of this place? But do you desire a cure? Or do you desire power from the spoils?
I think she desires a cure, even though she doesn't quite know. She doesn't quite know why. It's just a deep longing for something healing.
Very nice, thank you. Oh, Vero. How are you becoming more like a bee?
Up until now, Vero has attempted to retain as much soldierliness as possible, moving with intention and purpose and trying to look quite strong and in charge, whether she felt it inside or not. At least give that appearance. But if you're paying attention to how she's moving now, there's something strange about it. It's almost a bit more like a gentle dance. The way that she moves might be like she's trying to figure something out or communicate something to someone or many somethings.
And tell me, you've heard a lot about this place. You've heard a lot about the sixth form heart and what it contains and the power within. What makes you think that you will succeed where many others have failed so tragically?
Vero's not sure she will succeed. But it seems like the only thing left to her. The only path forward. So, even if it costs her everything, this is the path, this is the way. She's going to try anyway.
Very nice, thank you. This place envelops you all in this scented haze. It's disorientating. It's very easy as you brush past these huge plants that the stamens leave prickles of pollen everywhere. You can still hear this hum, this incessant hum, and you see a few bees actually bumping between the plants and going about their business. And these bees are the size of a fist, the size of starlings, and you see these shifting murmurations of them in the sky periodically, but when you look up they disperse. Maradi, you make quite a strange discovery as you kind of turned around. I think maybe some of the others can perhaps see the coffin perhaps bobbing above the line of the flowers every now and then, but then it's gone briefly and it's easy to lose track of time and where you are. But you find this pitcher plant, and it's huge. It's massive, the size of a hot tub. And inside is a person. It's a bloated corpse. And in this person's hands, and they're dressed in a adventurer's gear, I guess. They're not dressed like the apiarists were before. This person is holding a brazier that has long since burned out, but the scorch marks are apparent on this person's hands as they held it until their last breath. What do you do?
Muradi examines. The first thing he does is go straight to that brazier and examines it for any symbology, anything that he might recognize. And he sees on it the self-same symbol he has tattooed on his forehead. And without even hesitating, tries to wrestle it off the corpse.
I think I'd like to see a risk roll here. I think that what you're about to do could possibly disturb something. But let's have a look at the risk roll. What are you trying to achieve here?
I think this is something Riley wants to bring with him. He wants to detach it from his body and potentially even attach it to one of the chains that he's got on his body.
Okay, do you have any skills that might be appropriate to help you in this instance?
So
secrets maybe might have something to do.
I was going to say, from my background as a heretical inquisitor, I get the skill secrets, and knowing exactly what this relates to is, I think, something that would come naturally to him.
Okay, so we are going to add one light dice to the pool. I don't think this is risking your mind or body at this point, so there won't be a dark dice. What do we think as players could go wrong if this fails? Cash, Megan, the floor is open.
I'm thinking that maybe Muradi thinks he knows what this brazier is and what it stands for, but maybe that's not quite the truth, and maybe the artifact is much more powerful than what he assumed, and I could see it suddenly bursting up in bright flames that will engulf his hands and basically also his body, because the artifact is some form of magical thing that has immense power, which he doesn't quite understand.
So I think what you think could go wrong is that Muradi could unintentionally reignite this brazier.
The flame, yeah, exactly.
I really like that. I'm not going to add anything to that. Megan, did you have anything to add to that?
No, I quite like that.
Wonderful. So those are the stakes. You've got one light die currently. In terms of Devil's Bargains, if anyone has any ideas, have a think about it. I'm going to say that no matter what happens as a result of this roll, you are going to open up other pitcher plants in this area. They're connected by almost like the mycelium network that mushrooms have, and you're going to open up other ones, and the rest of the hunters are going to have to deal with this. That's my Devil's Bargain. Anyone else?
I think no matter what happens, you, by having established this connection with the brazier, you kind of cast a vision into your mind, something that you see, something that you understand, something that you might not understand, but at least something that will happen just in your mind, a scene or an image.
Ooh, lovely. I think perhaps no matter what happens, in trying to wrestle this piece out of the pitcher plant, some part of you makes contact with something within, maybe something that's a bit acidic, a bit damaging to you in some way.
Would you like to accept any of those devil's bargains?
Yeah, I'm going to take cash as well.
Wonderful. So, as far as I can see, that is 2 light dice. The way we've described it, I think that actually this is a risk to the way that I liked Cash's Devil's Bargain. I think this is going to be a possible risk to your mind. So I'd like to add a dark dice to that. So you should have 2 light dice and 1 dark dice. So give them a roll.
Okay, that is a 3 on a light dice as my highest.
So that was a failure. We're going to see this reignite and perhaps have an unintended consequence. Would you like to re-roll this pool by adding a dark dice, so you'll be at 2 light and 2 dark?
Why not? You know, in for a penny.
Go for it.
Okay, that is a 6 on the light die. And it's
And
higher than any dark.
right. Okie dokie. Is the dark die higher than your current ruin?
The highest dark is 4, so yes.
Then it looks like you'll be marking 1 ruin, so you're going to go up 1. So up to 4. And you succeed. Tell us what it looks like, how you managed to get this brazier out, and tell us how the symbol on it relates to what you thought it did, because your assumptions are correct. And I'd like to get a little more about what that might mean going forward.
A slight return, I think, to a scene we saw earlier of Maradi and Anders playing as kids. They're much older now, standing on the walls of the fortress. Anders is in charge now. And they're looking out over the camps and various assembled forces looking to attack. And Maradi's having to explain to Anders why he can't stay. After what I've done, I know they're coming for me. They'll look for me here. And he is holding one of these braziers and says to him, and it's as I was saying before, it is attached to the chain he has wrapped around his hand. With any luck, this should give me a bit of a good way to conceal myself for a time. But make sure if they come here, they think that they know that I'm not here. They know that I'm gone. Don't let them come in. Okay? And we see bits and pieces of him gathering his things, leaving the fortress behind. His brother watching on, concerned for what has all his brother's got himself into now. And as he walks out onto the road behind the fortress in the way, you can see the lantern is lit with a blue flame, and he makes his escape as hardly as he can.
Very nice. Thank you. Pharaoh, as you move rhythmically now through this landscape, finding it hard to get a solid footing in the knotted roots and the knee-high water, I think you find yourself wandering around in circles, and that somehow reminds you of why you're here. And Vero's drive is to take absolute control of the Cormoran wheel. Is that correct? Of Cormoran's wheel. Why do you desire to take control of it? And what does that mean to you?
When Vero was in the service many years ago, she fell in love. Cassian was his name, or Cass. He saw past all of her rough edges and saw that softness that few saw within. He was always seeking something, adventure or seeing new places, meeting new people. And whenever they could, they would steal moments together in between skirmishes or traveling across the lands, moving camps. They would find their own peace wherever they were. One season, there was a sickness that came. Spread through the ranks, spread through the camps. Vero got it, and so too did Cass. They were sent just by chance to different field hospitals. Vero recovered, mostly, but they never saw each other again. But they always said someday they would go to see the wheel. Cormoran's wheel, strange and wonderful place. Out in a wasteland, surrounded by an oasis. Beautiful flowers everywhere, life everywhere. So for Vero, it's not so much about seizing control of it, but of journeying there, finding the place that they said they would always return to, with some vague hope that maybe he too would be there. And recovering some kind of control in her life, in her path.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Macero, as you are winding your way through this landscape and finding the footing below, it's not just roots, weeds. This is home to some creatures that have found these conditions perfect to thrive and flourish. What animal can you see weaving between your ankles and the roots of these plants, navigating the environment far easier than any of you can?
I think the first thing that Misero will recognize is the very quick and swift movement of a group of ants that will stick together in a very straight line and follow each other, determined on their way wherever they are heading. And I think she stops on her way through this field to kind of examine this group of ants and almost admire their determination. And she will try to look past the plants to see if she can make out where they're heading to. I don't know if she does.
It's curious that you should note those ants and their dedication, because your background, I believe, is that of a devoted widow. Tell us a little something about the person you lost and why this quest that you're on speaks to your devotion for them.
The person that Masera has lost is her husband, and she's been without him for a very, 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 very long time. Actually, she can't even quite remember when it was that she lost him, but she just remembers that he was a loving partner, a husband that she could count on, someone that she saw herself growing very old with. And when they stayed together in their small, very humble, web-filled home, she remembers that she was always very lucky to see her husband Latro come home. And she cherishes the memories that she has with him. She cherishes every moment that she spent with him. She remembers when she gazes onto the little petals that she's covered herself with, moments where he stood with her in a field of flowers and offered her a collection of 3 or 4 flowers that he picked for her. And she remembers all the love that she had for him. But what she also remembers is that at some point her memory got kind of clouded, almost like it was hidden behind something. And she can see one specific image of her husband laying in a white web, staring blankly, completely still, and no life in his eyes. And she remembers herself kind of cowering over him, touching him, shaking him, yelling his name, Latro, 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 wake up! But he doesn't respond, he just stares straight into the nothingness. And she can't remember how that happened, why it happened, and how she got to that moment.
Very good, thank you. Speaking of altered memories, this place is having some sort of effect beyond the physical on you all. There's something mystifying about how it seems to be guiding you, deliberately leading you on a merry dance around this place. Almost like this field, this plain of flowers is emitting this pheromonal siren song that's pulling you in all sorts of directions. And as you've been thinking about these moments from your past, they're becoming clouded and they are becoming distorted. Maradi, what memory of your brother now has a floral tint to it?
Maradi remembers one of the few times he had returned home. The life of an Inquisitor doesn't lend itself to personal time very often. But he'd been able to visit his family, what remained of his family. But it wasn't the greatest moment for the two of them, as whatever catching up they'd been able to do was interrupted by the renewed siege. Great heavy engines of destruction being built outside the walls, and Anders having to take charge as he always did. Everyone scrambling inside, putting up the defenses, getting ready for an assault. Not something that Maradi was incredibly used to. His line of work tended to be more one-on-one confrontations. But doing what he could, and seeing great gouts of the stonework blown away, seeing people he'd grown up with, he'd known all his life, splayed on the ground, the life draining from their eyes. But it's odd now, when Muradi thinks back on this day, something which he would remember as one of the worst of his life. Those big bolts and stones being thrown at the fortress, in his mind now, turn into flowers. Something dancing on the wind and settling on the walls makes it look so pretty, like those gardens that they used to play in. He doesn't remember why he hated this day so much anymore.
Lovely, thank you. Vero, tell us a memory of sweet Cassian, and how, as you're remembering it now, there's something transformative or metamorphic, I suppose, about your memory of him. Tell us how, in this brief memory, you got a glimpse of Cassian as an insect.
I think as Vero is moving in that gentle sway, that dance that she's taken up without really noticing it, she's imagining him. She's imagining Cassian there with her, and they are dancing gently beneath a pale moon at the wheel, the gentle breeze blowing through the flowers, and she's just happily lost in that moment for now.
And Macero, please share a memory with us that you're now also remembering as being quite different. Please give us a glimpse of your home life, but perhaps how it might have resembled a hive.
I think what Macero will remember is coming home with Latro, her husband, one late evening, and once they arrive at the entrance of their home, they see that it looks much different than she can remember. Suddenly, instead of the usual straight lines that they take, everything has become kind of hexagonal, like a labyrinth almost. And they try to follow it. And Macero remembers how she's taken the hand of her husband to lead him deeper into where she expects her home to be. But at some point she turns around, and where she was before attached to her husband, holding his hand, suddenly there's no one.
Lovely, thank you. You all managed to shake these strange memories, these corrupted reminiscences out of your heads, as the kind of woozy silence of this place is punctured by a deep guttural bellowing. And you can all see where this is coming from wherever you are. And in fact, you manage to find each other quite easily as you come together to see a sight that is something to behold, something that you are almost honored to witness. You see a mighty moose standing at least 3-4 meters high at the shoulder. This thing is huge. It has antlers easily as wide as a biplane, and it is striding, almost parading in front of you across this floodplain. Its antlers are covered in bees, some of them dead, some of them still buzzing around this thing, almost as if a huge chunk of a hive has been picked up in this thing's antlers. It has honey dripping down its snout as it snuffles its way across this floodplain. And as you see it crunch through the plants, these plants that have given you nothing but, you know, they've caused you to tarry and get lost, this thing just strides across the plains, unbothered, unfettered. And you can see these great, mighty footprints that it's leaving that shimmer as if they're gold. And you all instinctively know that this moose, this grand creature that you're witnessing, has been to the heart. That's honey from the sixth form heart. And if that can get there, then maybe it's possible that you can all make it. But there's also something significant about this moose. You all know it, because you all know it from a childhood folk tale. Please, each of you tell me a detail from that folk tale and how it might inspire you on the rest of this mission.
In the folktale, as Muradi remembers it, the great king of the forest was there to repel interlopers, to protect its borders, to lead the legions of the forest against those who would oppose it. That thought of having that such a powerful force that could repel anything is always sticking in Muradi's mind. Even like now, seeing it, is almost beginning to remember why he was here again after being in all of that haze in this field.
What Macero remembers from the folk tale is that this moose, the king of the forest, as Muradi has referred to him, is, as far as she knows, immortal and has been wandering this world for eons, for eternity, basically. And I think in that she finds courage to move on, to press on, and to believe that she, on this quest, may also become immortal.
Vero sees the shining footsteps and remembers that from the stories, if you were to follow those footsteps, those shimmers, they would lead you to what you want most in that moment. And this gives her heart, because she was starting to feel like she was just going in circles, and in fact probably was.
Thank you. So the king of the forest has clearly made it to the sixth form heart and has left a trail of footprints, perhaps leading in that exact direction. You can see that direction being what lies beyond this floodplain, a densely knotted wood, And as you realize that following those footsteps, the king of the forest, perhaps in search of immortality, who knows, your destiny awaits in the dark of the humming wood. And that hum is getting louder. And so passes Ring 2.